Egyptian prophecy related to 2038. So we begin with this image out of the ancient Egyptians, and there's some powerful teaching here that I want to show you. So if you'll watch, I'll use my pointer here. You'll notice that Mother God is upside down from our reality. And even the hieroglyphs inside the womb of her consciousness, this is always a circle is a symbol of Ra consciousness or Ray consciousness, God consciousness. But it's an upside down reality from our world. Ouspensky says the same thing. He says that the next dimension is totally perpendicular to the reality you know now. And if you think about it, a one-dimensional person can run back and forth on the singular plane of the first dimension. They will never find the second dimension. You have to have an altered experience. You have to have a breakthrough. So here you are running back and forth on the first dimension. The second dimension doesn't exist in the first. You have to have an altered experience, and now you've got the two dimensions going. But you cannot find the third dimension in the first two dimensions. Again, it's perpendicular to your reality. You have to have an altered experience. That's why so many of us spend so much time teaching you how to have deep meditation, in which you make the shift to a reality that's perpendicular to anything you presently know. It's secretly carved everywhere and drawn and painted, and here in this beautiful image of Mother God, she conceives us out of her crown chakra. If you're looking at the image in my pointer, you see we're the little dark small portion of her conceived, created in the image of God, but a little godling of the great God, coming out of her crown chakra and the reality that's upside down from ours. Nevertheless, we are heading towards the God consciousness symbolized by the Ra circle. And that is our goal. And even though we're on the boat of life, look, the boat is always heading towards God consciousness, Ra consciousness, full illumination of who you are. Now, when we come down into this little boxed area in the drawing, you actually see our incarnations and the reality of our situation. And as I shared with you yesterday, ancient Egyptians consider the condition of being in a physical body for a celestial being to be what we might think of as being in a dung beetle body. So this condition to your celestial spiritual soul self is a confinement similar to the way you and I would look at being in a dung beetle body. It's very hard encasing us, and that's the reality. Nevertheless, in this dung reality, you can plant the seeds of resurrection in the dung of your life, and you will rise out of it as you heat that seed. Now, what actually happens for a dung beetle is they roll their dung towards the rising sun, and they plant a seed in it. And as the sun gets high noon, which Egypt calls the god Atun, it heats that ball of dung up, and the seed brings forth new life, and you resurrect out of the situation. So that's why you see the Egyptians drawing this dung beetle here with the Ra consciousness, but also counter-symbolized in the earthy way as a dung ball, the dung of your life. This is a secret teaching, a deep teaching about the processes of your incarnations and your growth that's going to occur, and that the Mother God, the source of your life, the womb out of which you came, is an upside down reality from the reality you're in now, which is very individual, but yet you are universal. It's very finite, yet you are infinite. So you see how the paradox is? So when you try to experience the fullness of yourself and you go into meditation, you must have a technique that will help you move into the expansiveness of universality and infinity out of individuality and finiteness, which takes a shift. It requires. Now, Jesus used the example of a woman pregnant. So you get the idea that you've conceived in the womb of your consciousness, your celestial nature, but now, like a woman, you must dilate your consciousness, your perception, and that's painful, to shift your reality into this infinite universal condition, and you see them drawing this here by doing it upside down from your reality. Yet you're always supported. You don't realize it, but Edgar said the unseen forces are more powerful than the seen. The heavens are always with you, and the phrase out of the scriptures that God has sent his angels to watch out for you through the whole process is an absolute truth. You have heavenly help all the time. All you simply have to do is open yourself up to that guidance, to that help. Now, Edgar teaches he doesn't really want you going for guides or anything. He wants you going for the source, or in this drawing, the mother God, the womb out of which you came, the celestial essence of your source of life. Then if that sends guides, that's fine, but don't go lower. You want to go directly to what is your birthright, to make contact with your Creator. And then if that sends you other guidance, that's fine. Now I'm going to take you into the tomb of Ramses III to help you get a picture of the story the way the ancient Egyptians tell it. And I'm going to use my big pointer here to help you because it's a little hard. This is a wide wall in the tomb. This is the real wall, and here's a sketch done to help you see some details. But first I'm going to focus on the wide wall. The Egyptians looked around and said, how can we convey their soul? It's not their body self, so how can we do it? And they said, well, it is their individuality, so let's take their heads, but put it on a bird body. And then they'll know it's the part of themselves that can fly above physicality, above the body. And that'll be called the Ba, or the soul. And so you see these human-headed bird bodies, see them here? And up here you see them in black. This is the dark, immature psyche we talked about yesterday, pulling the boat of the gods down into this realm. And this lion here is the lion of yesterday, and this is the lion of tomorrow. And these are the lions of the two horizons, yesterday and tomorrow. Yesterday, the souls came out of heaven on the bark or boat of the gods. And if you look down here, you'll see a beetle body with a ram head. They came into the dung world, the physical world, at the time of Aries, the beginning. That's the ram head. It began with a descent out of heaven into physicality, which captured you like a dung beetle body. You were encased in the beginning. And you see the souls honoring this truth in the beginning. Now here on the bow of the boat, you actually see a monkey. This is a baboon, symbolizing an aspect of Hermes or Thoth. And we came into the monkey body yesterday. See this? Yesterday, all of this happened. Now look up here, and you have past lives looking backwards, and they're done in dark. The whole journey, God's mind and the Spirit, God's Spirit, the Great Spirit, has been with you the whole time. When the Egyptians looked around and said, how can we convey spirit? They said, well, let's put their hands in the position of adoration and remove their heads. Then they'll know it's not thinking, it's that feeling you have when you're in adoration of the greater forces, and remove their heads. So when you see these two big arms here, And you're going to see them again in another drawing soon. See the two big hands and arms? That's the Great Spirit. The Great Spirit and the Great Consciousness, the circle is the mind, the Spirit is the life force, has been with you the whole journey. Now, tomorrow, everything's drawn in golden because you are maturing. Your immature psyche that was birthed by Mother God in the first drawing is now gaining golden knowledge and enlightenment, and so they draw us in white linen and gold, and we are pulled out of this reality by the lightness of a bird on the bough. See that? But what's really pulling us is human-headed cobras. Do you see the golden white cobras with human heads? See this? They looked around and said, how can we convey to them what has to be done? And they realized they have to raise their energy. Now, if you go to the scriptures, you'll see that Moses discovers that he's more than he thought he was. And so he goes out into the desert to search for who he really is and to make contact with God. The writer is so cool. Watch how the writer does this story and keep it in your minds as the symbolic, dream-like story with emblems and symbols. Moses comes out into the desert and he comes to a deep well in the desert around which 7 virgins are standing. Give me a break. This is unusual. The 7 maidens cannot water themselves or their flock because all the other herdsmen keep pushing them away. Moses, one guy, drives all the herdsmen away, all the distractions, and he waters the 7 maidens. 7 maidens. Get the secret of the story? Then the girls tell him a secret. We're the daughters of a high priest. Whoa, he says. And they take him to the tent of the high priest. And he marries the eldest daughter, the eldest maiden, the highest spiritual center. You see? You get a sense of the secret in the story? Then he sees God in a flaming bush. Now, since you and I are very physical and three-dimensional, we immediately project the bush out there. Oh, God's in that bush over there. But here's the bush. The secret book. Where did the Holy Spirit appear on the holy women and the disciples when Jesus breathed it upon them? The tongue of flame on the crown chakra. Same thing is happening to Moses. And he hears God's voice, and God says to Moses, Moses, raise the serpent off the desert floor. And the Egyptians had the same teaching. That serpent symbolizes your Kundalini life force, and it's running at too slow an RPM for you to come up and meet me face to face, because I'm running at a much higher vibration. So raising the Kundalini life force, like you see in these golden cobras with human heads up here, they're trying to teach you the importance of raising your energy. Nicodemus sneaks away one night and he asks Jesus for the mysteries. Jesus gives him 3 mysteries. The most famous one, you must be born anew. Nicodemus, being a pretty earthy guy, says, well, how can I get back in my mother's womb? I can just imagine Jesus going, oh my God, this is going to be hard. But he says to Nicodemus, that which is born of flesh is flesh, Nicodemus. Don't try to overdo that, redo that. That which is born of spirit is spirit, and you must conceive in the womb of your consciousness your spiritual self and give birth to that. That's the second birth. The second thing he tells Nicodemus is, no one ascends to heaven but he or she who first descended from heaven. All of us in here came from heaven. When Edgar Cayce was asked in trance, when we finally make contact, what will it be like? And this smart aleck said, familiar. And I'm going, wait a minute, this can't be. Yes, you came out of heaven. There's a heavenly aspect in each of us. And when we reconnect, we'll go, oh yeah, of course. It'll be familiar. So no one ascends to heaven but he or she who first descended from it. But the third thing Jesus says to Nicodemus is, as Moses raised the serpent in the desert, so must the sons and daughters of God, the Son of God and their sons and daughters, be raised up to eternal life. And here you hear the story of how Moses raised the serpent in the desert. He did it twice. First, he did it for himself. When God spoke to him from the flaming bush, he reached down and lifted the serpent up, and it became a powerful staff in his hand. And that staff was the staff that did all the magic, that finally let Pharaoh let the people go. Also, he gave this staff to his brother Aaron, and when they were going to select the high priest, God said, have all the candidates stand there with their staffs out. And the staff, it's a piece of wood that rebuds, comes alive again and starts to grow as a tree again. That's the high priest. So they all have the staff out, and sure enough, Aaron's staff burst forth with new life and starts to grow again. And of course, that staff is put in the Ark of the Covenant as a reminder to us that you must raise this dead energy that's running so low that your vibes are too low, which is your cerebrospinal system, or as Patanjali and Yoga Sutras called it, your Sushumna must be raised up to a higher vibe. You see it right here in this magnificent wall drawing with the secret teachings of the ancient Egyptians. That human-headed cobra energy, raising your Kundalini life force, will lift you out of this reality, and God is with you on that journey. Here we see the symbol of the Kundalini coming up over the heads of the drawings in the form of a cobra. Here you see in Buddhism the Kundalini concept coming up the back of the Sushumna and over, raising the life force within you. So you really have to budget time for this. I know a lot of people come up to me and say, I'm scared of Kundalini. There's good reason to be. It's very powerful. But if you surround yourself with protection and the right attitude, the right motivation for doing it, you'll be okay. In the Eastern world, they teach one wing of the bird is the right technique and knowledge. You're getting that. Many of you already have. But the other wing of the bird is the right heart. And the bird doesn't fly with one wing. So always check your heart. Why am I doing this? To glorify myself so that everybody will look at me and think, geesh, wow. You know, when I was young and first got into this, I came across this Cayce reading when a person asked, how will we know when we're doing the right thing? And he says, when whatever you're doing makes you more humble, more meek, more patient. Well, that's not what I got into this for. No, I wanted a pulsating aura, just zapping people whole, psychically knowing every thought spinning around me. Humble, meek, patient, and here's Cayce teacher. Who was he talking to really? My ego, right? And my heart was in the wrong place. It was self-glorification, self-exaltation. These were the things I was seeking, to be a wondrous light. Humble, meek, patient, which actually causes you to give birth to the true self. And if you've ever seen women in natural childbirth, there is a moment when their eyes change, and my wife, my late wife, delivered 3 of them before my eyes. When their eyes change and their whole attitude changes and they sink right in with the forces of nature and they don't want you to say a stinking word. That's exactly what's going to happen to you. You sink in as you're dilating the impossible to deliver the impossible aspect of yourself, so perpendicular to your reality that it seems unlikely that you are this, that this is real. And you must dilate your mind, your perception, your heart to deliver this. It's a big process, and it starts with raising your vibrations. So you need to budget time. And when you go to sit down to raise your energy, it's very simple techniques. From ancient times, the techniques are so simple, I'm going to give them to you right now, and you're going to say, oh, that's too easy. First, of course, I said, surround yourself with protection and check your heart out. What's my intention here? To reunite with the infinite source from which I came, for its energy to be manifest, not for the glory of my ego. Got it? So I've got myself right. All you have to do is take a deep inhalation breath, but feel yourself raising energy as you do it. And you do a series of these, and as you raise your breath, try to imagine the breath of life in chapter 2 of Genesis. Yahweh Elohim took the dust of the earth and breathed the breath of life into us. So, and I feel the breath of God come with me, the breath of the angel, however you want to look at it. The infinite breath of life if you can't deal with God. That's fine with me. Then you exhale and bathe the body as you're doing it. Then hold the empty breath for a minute because there's dead stillness in the empty breath. And you'll feel the stillness. Remember Psalm 46, be still and know God. Be still. So when you have the empty breath, then you do it again. You're raising the energy, the breath of life. Bathe the body, still empty. This is right out of The Secret of the Golden Flower. You can get that book. Carl Jung is on the book. You'll see his name on the front cover of the book. And you'll learn the circulation of the light is the technique. It's a Taoist teaching. Very simple. Edgar Cayce supports it. He adds a few little tricks with your breath, but that's a simple one. The other thing you can do, and this was done in all the ancient temples, and most of your souls were in those temples at least once. Vibration was used to alter the body. And they wanted a natural vibration that set with you, uniquely with you. And the one thing you have in your body temple that vibrates is your vocal cords. So chanting or incantation was used to raise the energy. Now Edgar Cayce gives the chant Om, and he wants you to visualize yourself shifting as the sound shifts until you get to the Om. And then up here you will be at the full Om right here as you come up. So good chanting and incantation is inner sounding, not singing. Om, that's singing. I'm vibrating the vocal cords to vibrate your eardrums. Chanting, I'm going to direct the sound into the chambers of my body. You have three major chambers: the abdominal cavity, the cardiopulmonary cavity, and the cranial cavity, or cavities because of the sinus cavities, cranial cavity. So I'll move my hands to show you where I'm directing my mind and the sound. A good incantation is resonant, so I'm really going to vibrate. It's inside, and it's monotone. So here we go. And it'll get you high. If you've practiced this, your body's already knows what's coming, and so it gets high fast. So hold on just a minute. I'll show you again here. And you can do tricks with it after you get experience to raise your energy even more, such as this one here. I'll show you a little one you can do. Om. And what's actually happening is you're vibrating internally, and your pituitary, the master gland of the body, is a suspended gland hanging off of your brain like this, right back here. And so when I'm going, I'm massaging my pituitary gland, and it's dropping new hormones, and the body's changing. The gland's going, what's he up to? Change the message, send the message out to all the other glands. We're going to do something alternative to normal. Change the body temple, drop different hormones. And it really starts to work. And the more you practice, the more effective it becomes. And you get into deeper and deeper states. And then once you've got the body vibration raised, like the cobra energy raised, then you must raise the mind to go out of finiteness into the infinite, out of individualness into the universal. Because the womb of Mother God is infinite. It's vast. And so you must make a shift from this focus into this vast oneness that you are just a part of, and you join in with that. All these ancient symbols carry these teachings. Here we see Shiva. Now in the Trinity of Hinduism, Shiva is always known as the destroyer. But what people forget is Shiva is the destroyer of the illusion. That's what you must keep in mind. Don't fear Shiva. The Shiva energy in you, the Shiva in you, is the destroyer of the illusion. So don't be afraid. But you see the cobra rising with Shiva in his meditation here. Here you see Moses. This is the second time Moses raises the serpent. The second time he does it, all the people have left Egypt and they're out in the desert with him. And he prays to God that they're all suffering from snake bites. Why is that? Because they have the low energy in the lower chakras and they're all messing around with one another and it's all getting terrible, symbolized by the snake on the ground. Egyptians have the same story. Apep is the serpent that nips at your heels every time you try to make passage into the higher heavens. Apep bites at you to distract you. Lower serpent energy. Well, God tells Moses, raise that serpent up onto a staff, and everybody that looks at it will be affected at the subconscious level, the subliminal level of a raised serpent raising their energy to higher levels. So you even see this in the scriptures following also the Hindu concept. The Kundalini is the life force, and it manifests in many ways. It is also the sexual energy. Like back when we were in our young 20s and we were doing these types of meditations, we also had to be very careful about our sexual energy because you would elevate it. And, in your 20s, you don't need much elevation of your sexual energy. So we all got together and we all had all these different tricks of how to channel sexual energy into creative energy, athletic energy, burn it off, do something, but stop going nuts the other way. This is a fantastic wall because here you see a serpent on his tippy tail. So as an initiate, you would look at this and say, snakes don't do that. They don't stand on their tippy tail. We must not be speaking about snakes. This must be symbolic. Then you look up here and you see the snake is blowing a bubble. This is ridiculous. Snakes don't blow bubbles. But right above it, the teacher is conveying raw consciousness, God consciousness. And the message is, when you raise the serpent energy, the Kundalini energy in your body, you blow bubbles of higher consciousness. Raising your vibes automatically lifts your mind and starts to get you into higher vibration, which naturally leads to higher consciousness. Isn't that a beautiful, clever little symbol? No initiate could look at that and say, oh, this snake's weird. They would go, this is not a snake. We're talking about something else here. Here on this papyrus, we see a dung beetle rolling his dung in a cocoon. Well, immediately an initiate would go, they never do that, so we must not be talking about dung. We are talking about your lower self, taking what you're dealing with and doing the best you can to turn it into a cocoon for the great transformation of your being into the butterfly of heaven that you will rise out of. Powerful symbols. Over here you see humans walking with God consciousness. See the symbol of God on the place of their head? Their minds are in celestial consciousness. This is Ra, this is God consciousness. Here you see the serpents raised on their tippy tails again, something they don't do. Here you see an oar, which is a rudder, with a Kundalini cobra guiding it and the all-seeing eye guiding you. So this would be the symbol of your ideal. When you raise the energy, what is the rudder? What is guiding you? How are you guiding this as you raise the energy? What's your ideal? And is the infinite being invited to participate with you and guide you, the all-seeing? These are powerful little training lessons on these papyruses for our life, our symbolism. Here you see the great Hermes, and this wall is on the most sacred temple in all of Egypt, Abydos. It is the Mecca, the Jerusalem of ancient Egypt, Abydos. On the wall you see Hermes with the blue head and the ibis bird. Why do we give Hermes the ibis bird head? Because the ibis bird lives between the two worlds of the deep unseen watery land below the surface and the surface world we live on, the earth. So he is the one who can live between the two worlds. That's a powerful ability, and you have got to learn to live between the two worlds. You're here purposeful and intentionally for an incarnation. You don't want to ruin that, but at the same time, to fully achieve your goal here, your soul's goal, you must be in touch beneath the surface of your consciousness, the deep water. You only see the surface, but beneath it is the source of the unseen powers. So here Hermes is putting the ankh of life in the nostril of an incarnate person here, but look what he's holding, 2 staffs. And on the staffs are little cobras wearing hats. Now immediately an initiate would go, cobras don't wear hats. So this must be another symbolic teaching to me. Notice that the hat here is the ruler of Upper Egypt, or the higher self, and the red hat with the little curly Q is the ruler of Lower Egypt, or the lower self. The cobra with the red hat is on a papyrus staff. In other words, study and learning. Your lower self studies, applies itself by learning. But the higher self is on the lotus blossom, and it's about to bloom. So you have spontaneous enlightenment from the opening of the lotus, as well as application of study. You see what he's showing here in these 2 wonderful staffs that he's carrying? These are big secrets being conveyed to initiates who can read the wall. Now I'm just going to jump away from Egypt for a moment here, just for a couple of slides with Kabbalah or Kabbalah, and show you some principles here. Here we have the Gnostics, who were mystical Christians using Kabbalah numbers, and they are showing the same teaching they knew. See these cobras, these serpents? And notice they correlate them to parts of their body. This is the serpent energy in your genitals, your navel, your heart, and your head. And the numbers correspond. Here's the number of the beast right out of Ezekiel, 666. All the way up to the conqueror, the intuitively wise, the Lamb of God. Now, this chakra right here, Cayce taught, the throat chakra, is narrow because it's the will chakra, and you must subdue your self-centered, self-seeking will and seek the will of the creative forces, the higher will. And when you do, you make the passage into the higher chakras and the upper temple of your head. Here you see the tree of life with the emanations from God on the Kabbalah tree of life. The great I am and the little I am are seeking to unite, and all of these emanational forces here help you. But the secret in the drawing to the initiate is right there, the deep. Now you can study this stuff, but if you don't sit down and get into meditative reflection on it, you will not get the essence, the spirit of it. So you need to study, then sit down and have the lotus of your mind open, and you will start to understand each of these emanations. This is the teaching in studying this tree of life. Now they correlate the tree of life to your body temple and then above your body. And many of you have talked with me already that you believe chakras are above the body as well as in the body. And I told you, Edgar Cayce said, yes, you actually have 12 chakras. And this guy came to Cayce and said, well, tell me the other chakras. And smart aleck Cayce said, why? You're not using the 7. No reason to learn more if you're not going to use it. So here you go. Look, down in the root area of our creative glands is the little I am, and way above us is the great I am, and the goal is for these to unite. In Kabbalah, we have planes of emanation, planes of creation, which notice is more in the mind. We have planes of formation in the heart, and then planes of action out here in the gonads and the activities of your creative forces, or physical creative forces. And these planes correlate to the mind-body connection, even to portions way above your body. How many of you in here have had a meditative experience or a reflective experience in which you've sensed something above your body? Raise your hands. Look around. See all these? So this is really a truth that many of us know already. Here is the layout of the chakras with the Kundalini pathway in the form of a cobra. Now I know most yoga teaches it goes straight up to the crown, but if you look at ancient Hinduism, it's a cobra in the striking position, and Edgar Cayce taught that it comes up to the base of the brain, over to the center of the brain. Then there is the phenomenal opening of the crown, and the infinite joins the individual, the finite, and flows, and he says it fills up the hypothalamus and pituitary, which is the gland in the front of your huge frontal lobe. You know about 98% of the genome with animals, monkeys, and orangutans is the same as ours. You know that from the scientists. Believe me, that 2% is real important. And the other thing that's real important is your huge frontal lobe. None of them have this huge frontal lobe. When that energy starts to flow, the frontal lobe fills with this moral, this wise, this judgment energy that's more powerful than your physical urges. For example, it is rare in the animal kingdom that if sexual energy rises and you feel the heat of procreation, they don't overcome it. Whether it's sister or mother, look out. But a human can overcome that with a higher ideal. And that's the great frontal lobe saying, not sister or mother. Do you see? That's almost impossible. You're overcoming a powerful force of nature with a thought, with an ideal. Yes, but you can do it because you have this huge frontal lobe that says, I will not do this, no matter how horny I am or crazy I am, this is taboo. Do you see? You are able to do it because of the great frontal lobe. And Edgar says that the Kundalini is in the position of the cobra in the striking position. And he shows you root chakra are ovaries in females, testes in males. Don't worry, ladies, if you've had a hysterectomy, the body compensates for the loss of certain glands by having the secretions come from other locations. And men, if you've been castrated, just don't worry about it. You'll pick up the energy. The navel chakra are the cells of Leydig, named after the doctor who found them. That's the navel chakra. The solar plexus are the adrenal glands in the pancreas, right in here. Believe it or not, the heart chakra, and most of you know this, is not the heart pump. It's the thymus gland that has the T cells, which are those that help build against AIDS. We learned so much about T cells when we began to have to deal with AIDS, because these are the immune ones. Now, I interviewed a lot of research doctors who did a lot of study on this, and they told me that all children are born with a good-sized thymus gland, but as they grow and become adults, it shrinks in many. But in others, it stays big or gets bigger. And that means they build an immune system. So you want the heart chakra alive and pumping. Then you go into the throat, which is the thyroid gland. Then you come up to the center of the brain, which is the pineal gland, and the crown, according to Cayce, which is a little different than yoga. And then you come over to the frontal lobe and the hanging pituitary gland. And you don't even have to do the chants like I did. You can just hum and vibrate your pituitary and make it change. So watch this. I am vibrating that little bugger. It's getting a massage, you see. Eventually it says, enough, John, we'll change the message. Do you see? Hormone message in my body temple is changing. This is really important. This is powerful secret stuff. Now we're going to jump back to Egypt and we're going to look at Senedjem's tomb. Senedjem was an artisan. He worked all day in Pharaoh's tomb, came home, got a little dinner, and went into his garage and built this little tomb of his own. It is so small, it is not bigger than the edge of the stage to about here, and it's low, but that's all he could manage. But he carved the greatest spiritual truths on this little tomb, and I'm going to show them to you. I'm going to blow it up right over here on this wall, and here it is. He shows the secret location and the truth of transformation. First off, when an initiate looks at this, there are no blue jackals. The jackals are black. So immediately they say, this is about what jackals do. And what do jackals do? This is not a jackal. It's about their power, their extra sense. If you go on a journey far away from home and lose your way, the jackals will pick up the scent of the trail back home. So blue jackals, blue being the spiritual color in Egypt, blue jackals means they can pick up the scent of the way to heavenly home, back to home. So here you see him, and he's going to show you the scent of heaven. First, the location of the sacred beginning is between your two eyes. That is where the pure white light of the original light is. Around it is the Shem, S-H-E-M. The Shem is infinity in the circle, tied to temporality in the shaft. The Shem is also femininity in the circle and masculinity in the shaft. When you bring the infinite and the temporal together, when you bring the feminine and the masculine together, you start to flow with the water of life. See the wavy black lines? This is the water of life. That water fills your cup that runneth over, right out of the 23rd Psalm. As this flows and you do it enough, your cup starts to fill with the water of life. It overflows and waters the lotuses. You see the lotuses? And when the lotuses get enough of the water of life, they put out a scent, a fragrance. And your sixth sense, which is symbolized by Anubis and the jackals, that's what it is, picks up the scent of the way home by open lotuses. So when you open your lotuses, you start to put out an awareness of a familiar sense, and you know the way home. It's a powerful symbol painted on his tomb, showing us this wonderful lesson about the scent of heaven. picking up the scent of the lotuses. Here are lotuses of Egypt. The Egyptian lotus is this violet lotus here, the blue lotus it's called. The Indian lotus is the white lotus. A very important teaching for you. So when you're meditating and you're raising your vibrations, which raises your consciousness, you need to do it in a regular manner. And as you do, you start to create a reaction, which is the flow of the water of life. And when that flow comes, not only do your chakras, which are already spinning and giving off energy, now the lotuses of your consciousness and your awareness start to open, and you pick up the fragrance of the source of yourself, where you came from, the way back to heaven. A magical teaching from ancient Egypt. Now we're going to move to the Egyptian Book of the Dead and a prophecy that is carved in the stone of the Great Pyramid of Giza. This prophecy was known in the 1800s, but was pretty much set aside in the 1900s. And any of us who wrote about it were called pyramid idiots. Yes, we were. I endured that for many years. Pyramid idiots. Because in the 1800s, archaeologists believed in it. In the 1900s, they became so scientific, so factual only, they wouldn't look at symbolism and legend and lore. It's amazing to me that you don't go to a native people and say, what is the legend your people carry about this? They don't do that. They don't even want to hear from those people. They just, oh, okay, that's this, that's it, and we've got this law. Now they're changing. Grad students these days are much more into this than they used to be. So I don't want to tag everybody with the wrong label there. The pyramid text was first discovered by French Egyptologist Sir Gaston Maspero in 1881. They are found in the pyramid of Unas, the 5th dynasty. Unas likely ruled from 2375 to 2345 BC. That's 4,000 years ago or more than 4,000. Some, though, do date his pyramid at 3,000 BC, so even further. Scholars agree that the pyramid texts, as they are called, belong to a much earlier people, that the priest of the subsequent dynasty period, in other words, this is pre-dynastic Egypt, and the priest of the dynastic period that you and I know of learned about this and received it orally, and they were the ones that started to carve it on the early pyramids, mostly in Saqqara. So here you see one of the pyramids, and you see the Egyptian Book of the Dead carved on the walls. Here you see another, just to give you an idea of what it looks like. These are small little temples, chambers inside little pyramids. Now, it was later written out on papyruses, so I'm just going to show you a few so you can get an idea. This is the boat of the gods. This is a symbol of meditation. This is the way the ancient Egyptians drew meditation, with God consciousness and the Ankh of life, always heading towards the macrocosmic infinite consciousness. Here you see Osiris and Isis. You can always identify Isis because she has the throne of God on her mind. She is the one who immaculately conceived the Redeemer in ancient Egypt, Horus. I don't have time to go into that. Let's keep going, John. You get distracted. This is Horus. The falcon is the higher mind. She conceived the higher mind. And the falcon is the symbol of that higher mind. The Egyptians looked around and said, oh, he's a mile above the earth and can see a mouse on the desert floor. He has a much different perspective of life than we down here on the timeline. So that's the higher mind. Here you see some more of the various papyruses from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. Now here you see one in which we have the lions again, the lion of yesterday, the lion of tomorrow. This is the reverse, though. This is yesterday and this is tomorrow, because that's the phoenix bird of ancient Egypt, and he's caught scent of the open lotus. So he's about to resurrect. Over here you see two incarnate, man and woman incarnate, but here you see their souls, the Bas. Do you see? Say yes, just even if you don't see it. Okay. Here's the higher mind, and when you see the altar of God, you know this is the higher mind of Isis. Great. Some of you are right with me. The rest are going, oh, I need some coffee. Here again, you see the phoenix bird of resurrection, and he's honoring the phoenix, the symbol of rising above any situation. Now here we see Isis's higher mind, see, she's got the throne of God, and her sister Nephthys. Nephthys has the house of transformation with the magic bowl on top, or some people think it's a satellite dish on top of the house. Anyway, her sister Nephthys is magical and can receive and guide you through the netherworld. She can help when you're trying to make transition. Isis is the symbol of conceiving the impossible, or what we were talking about earlier, dilating your consciousness to do what seems impossible or unlikely. So these two are always there to help. Here you see this Egyptian honoring the same thing Hermes was holding, a papyrus and a lotus staff with cobras on them, showing the combination of your lower self and your higher self working together for the illumination and the raising of vibration and consciousness. The Egyptian Book of the Dead is also carved on tomb walls, and here we are in one of the tombs, and you will see it carved on the walls here. Here again you see what we saw earlier, the scarab or the dung beetle with the Aries ram head, showing in the beginning time we entered this world. We were godlings out of the infinite. We became individuals. See this projection being birthed out of the womb of Mother God and into the dung world at the time of Aries. Here's another beautiful symbolic drawing. The great Ka, the great spirit, remember what I told you? Hands in adoration but no head. The mind of God and the spirit of God are with us. And we have a microcosmic awareness of the great infinite mind. Two cobras raised, and again, that's right out of Hinduism, Ida and Pingala, Ida and Pengali, which relate to your autonomic nervous system, which is composed of sympathetic and parasympathetic. You have sojourns in the mind of God, and then in your projected as a starlight being, you come out with your free will, and you use that. Then you retreat back in again, reflect on everything, correlate what was going on, and you get another try, and you project out as a starlight being. Back and forth. These are called the reincarnations of Ra. You are the little ray of the great ray, and you have incarnations and sojourns elsewhere as well as incarnations here. Gaston Maspero, the famous French Egyptologist, professor of archaeology, and the developer of the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, said, quote, "The Great Pyramid and the Egyptian Book of the Dead reproduce the same original. The one in words, the other in stone," and now we're going to enter and see this. At the real entrance of the Great Pyramid, not the one we tourists use, there is this icon. This icon is called the horizon of heaven. And it's considered that light is going to break over that horizon, so the Book of the Dead calls the Great Pyramid the light. And the Book of the Dead correlates to the stone passageways inside. There's also a timeline. How did they come up with the measurement of time? From a thing called the Boss Mark. And here you see we're in the chamber of the triple veil, this is called, right out of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, this is called the triple veil. And the first veil is stone, and I'm underneath this shooting up, and right there is the Boss Mark, and the measurement of 1 pyramid inch is the distance from the surface to the projected ending of this little mark. This is very flat on the bottom. You can sort of see it over here. that is a pyramid inch. And so we start to measure, and the first guy that really did this was David Davidson and his colleague Aldersmith. They put this together and correlated the Book of the Dead with the pyramid passageways. Now here's how it goes. Outlined words are the names in the papyruses of the Book of the Dead. So this lower one, we call it the pit or the subterranean chamber, but the Book of the Dead calls it the chamber of chaos or upside downness. And we descended out of heaven into a confused condition where we thought we were terrestrial and lost touch with our terrestrial. Chaos and upside downness. Here is the gate of the ascent, and the first passageway is the hall of truth in darkness. Now, if you've ever been in there, and I'm going to have to hold on to my mic, you know you have to squat down and duck walk through it. It's very low. When Edgar was asked, why is it low, he said, to create humility in the initiate. Darn, that humility stuff again. So you have to go all the way up the hall of truth while in darkness. Now, Davidson was a biblical scholar, and he correlated it to Israel under the yoke of the law, that long period where they simply followed the law. Now, you can barely see it, but this last step here measures 4 BC. David Davidson didn't know anything but about documents we found later, but he still wrote it as the birth of the Logos, or the Word, or Christ. Christ is the Greek word for the Hebrew word Mashiach, which we transliterate Messiah, and in Greek it's Christos, which we translate Christ. Both words simply mean anointed. Anointed with oil, sacred oil, the anointed one. 4 BC. And then your head clears at 30 1/4 AD, and the Egyptian Book of the Dead calls that the crossing of the pure waters of life, the passion of the Messiah. Remember, the Egyptian Messiah was Horus. Believe it or not, long after Davidson was dead, archaeologists found a document in Jerusalem dated 4 BC, written by Herod, saying, kill all male children under the age of 2. So that means the birth of Jesus was actually 4 BC. We got it wrong. But here's Davidson just pointing out, honestly, as a scientific measuring guide, that the last step is 4 BC, so it doesn't fit with 0. And then your head clears at 30 1/4, so he thought this all fit, but he didn't know why, because the dating should have been 0. The Queen's chamber in the Book of the Dead is called the chamber of the second birth, or the new birth. Again, we have this idea that you must give birth to your spiritual self. Then here comes the grand gallery of the hall of truth while in light, and that's what you and I have been walking for a long time. Now we're going to come up here into the chamber of the open tomb and the chamber of the triple veil, and let me blow that up for you. I'm going to quote this. This is Cayce. There are periods when even the hour, day, year, place, country, nation, town, and individuals are pointed out in this pyramid prophecy. That's how correct are many of these prophecies. Now, I was in my 20s when I read this, and the first thing that struck me is, are you telling me the whole journey of human souls incarnate in the earth was known and could be laid out in a timeline of our passage, what we would have to go through the evolution of matter and the awakening of our minds again? Was it all known? We knew it when we descended, we carved it, and then we walked through it? Oh man, my mind was a mess for years. So now here we are. This is the grand gallery. This is the great step, and it's almost impossible to step it. You really need help to get up there. Now notice 1 inch equaled 1 year here, but the Book of the Dead says time has become so condensed that it takes 1/12 the time for something to happen in your life than it used to. Time is sped up. And do you feel like time has been sped up? We are in this crunch period. Davidson measured all of this, and here's another low passage and a second low passage. Edgar said humility and hardship and struggle, and here we go with the First World War, the war to end all wars. The dates hit perfectly. These are Davidson's dates. Oh my. The first real crush was World War I. Then you come into the chamber of the triple veil, the three veils: conscious mind, subconscious, superconscious. Then right here you hit the Great Depression. Right in here, the Great Depression begins, and then we come into what the Archangel Gabriel told Daniel is the final tribulation, World War II. When Edgar Cayce was asked what the World War II was all about, he said, it's the last chapter of the book of Daniel. Well, that can't be. If it is the last chapter of the book of Daniel, we're in the transition period. Do you realize the last chapter of the book of Daniel is Archangel Gabriel's prophesied end of the times, and halftime? We are done with the journey. We're in a transitional period. This is amazing. Now, Davidson takes us to this measurement, 1945, dead center in the King's Chamber, the end of World War II, and the beginning of the 50s, and all of this, the Cold War also. And then he and Aldersmith thought it all ended right here in 1955, right on the wall. And Edgar was asked about that, 30 years later. And Edgar said, no, you were supposed to go up the wall. Well, here we were, reincarnate, so we went up the wall. And now you can see the dates. Edgar said to change 55 to 58 because of an adjustment. So that wall begins in 1958. Every time you go into stone, these are the stones, granite stones, these are limestones, you're in a hard period on the earth. Every time you hit an open chamber, Edgar says it's expansive, buoyant, expansive movement. And here's 2012. We're breaking right there out of this stone period into an expansive movement. Then we go back into a hard period. We're heading straight for the apex. Edgar said when you hit the apex, the prophecy is done. The fifth root race body begins. The 12 chakras awaken. You move into a new era. The Armageddon is finalized. We're in the Armageddon right now, a battle of the dark and the light. 2038, and here's his quote: all changes that came in the religious thought in the world are shown there, in the pyramid chronograph, in the variations in which the passage through same is reached, from the base to the top, or the open tomb. See, this sarcophagus never had a lid on it, and it's larger than this door, so the whole thing was built around the sarcophagus. It's rose granite. If you strike it with the fat of your hand like this, it'll ring. And if you're inside when we strike it, you will ring. And the initiation was for you to be inside it like this and leave physical life and go out into the duat, the portal. And when you go out into the portal, to realize your celestial nature and then be able to come back, pick up the body again, and realize I'm now a celestial being. You recall the near-death experience people? They all said that once they came back, they knew about their spiritual self and the great spiritual life, so they were no longer afraid of death or anything, and so they lived physically again, but with a whole different disposition and attitude, right? That's exactly what the initiates were doing in this sarcophagus. They were learning to have the realization of the truth of who you are, but come back into a purposeful incarnation, as disgusting as this vehicle is. But you now had a new spirit, a new mind, a new understanding. That's why the initiation was so important. This is Cayce again. Giza is the place of the initiates, and they're gaining by personal application. You can't just read this stuff. You have to live it. You have to practice it. You have to become it. And your opportunities are around you all the time. The very next person that comes up to you, do you talk to them like an ego or like a celestial spiritual being that knows they belong in the community? That's all there is to it. If you start acting like one, you're going to become that one. You are that one in action, application, living in. And by the journeys through various activities, yes, you are going to go through certain activities. Remember Job, the test. You are going to go through certain activities. And you're going to be tested, and how you handle them, you process in your own self and decide, well, I could change that, I could do it differently, or that was a good way to do it, and I'm going to hold to that in the future. Remember, Job's friends kept telling him it was all Job's fault. And we got people around us that keep saying that too. You know what's wrong with you, John? You're hanging out with all those funny people down at that crazy place. You gotta, just like Job said to his friends, no, I sense the Spirit of God, and whenever I've done something wrong, or my children or my household did something wrong, I knew God was all merciful and that the goal was enlightenment, not punishment. So I'm not accepting that punishment is God's karmic way, but that karma is enlightenment, education. This is what that feels like. This is what that means. Do you like that or not? No, I don't. I'm going to change. The goal is enlightenment, not retribution. A soul becomes conscious, aware of its contacts. Now, watch how Cayce tries to share this fourth dimensional idea with us. It becomes conscious and aware of its contacts with the universal, cosmic, God, creative forces. Trying to get you to grasp the magnitude of this infinite essence in which all life exists. In its experience by feeding itself upon the food, or as the scripture says, the fruits of the Spirit. The result of Spirit, of God, of life, of reality. And what are the fruits of the Spirit? Love. I know it's insane, but you cannot do anything more transformative than to try to think of yourself and others and go through a day in the spirit of love. I know we're all thinking, yeah, John, but what about yoga breathing and kundalini and chakra? Yeah, I'm telling you, as silly as it sounds, if you start to engage your thoughts and your feelings, and when you go through the day in love, they're going to talk about you for a few days. Have you seen John lately? He's a little weird today, really full of love and cheer. And something's wrong. I think he's smoking something. Love transforms you. No doubt about it. Love is the ultimate essence of the spirit of the creative forces. Hope, kindness, gentleness. A gentle word has saved many a soul. Brotherly love, sisterly love, and patience. Edgar Cayce said, patience is not just a virtue, it's a dimension of mind. A patient mind breaks through the dimension of time and space. Patience. These make for the awareness in the soul of its relationship to the creative forces that is manifest in self, in the ego, in the I am of each soul, and the I am that I am. Remember, Moses asked God, what's your name? I got to tell him your name. He said, I am that I am. The great I am is the little I am, but he has given freedom to your little I am to come to know yourself individually. So now Carl Jung would say, it's important you do develop an ego. But the ego, he tried to convey to us, a small s ego is the egoistic ego. That's the little selfish self. Then he would capitalize self, and that was the higher ego. Because how can you come to know yourself unless you are a self? So ego is good if it's the big S self. You must come to know yourself to be uniquely yourself, and yet one with all the other selves, as messy as some of them are, and some of them are really dangerous to you, and you have to be aware of that. Jesus said, be cunning as serpents and guileless as doves. That's a tricky one. The old record in Giza is from the journey to the Pyrenees. Now, when Edgar says that, he's talking about escaping the sinking of Atlantis and Lemuria, the end of the ancient prehistoric time, to the death of the Son of Man as a man. He's speaking of you and I realizing we are not physical beings, that we're greater than that. So that part of us dies. Edgar said, crucify desire and self so that the greater you can come through. So the symbolism of the crucifixion was more the crucifying of your narrow view of yourself, your little self, and the birth and resurrection of your true self, of your higher self. And then to 1998, and this begins the change. The Egyptian prophecy began with an involution of spirit and mind, your spirit and mind, into matter. You gradually, over a long period of time, became encased in matter and the evolution up through matter, until souls regain the spirit consciousness they once possessed, but at a more mature level, so you're immature. Now you got to read these red words. This lady, I knew this lady, she lived in Norfolk, which is a town right near us, and she asked Edgar Cayce what would happen in the Aquarian Age, and he answered, in the Piscean Age, in the center of same, we had the entrance of, and he uses the Hebrew name, Emmanuel, which means in English, God among men. See? What did that mean? The same will be meant by the full consciousness. You will gain the full consciousness of the ability to communicate with or be aware of the relationships to the creative forces and use them in your material environment. And then he warns us, you had this ability in Atlantis and Lemuria, and you destroyed yourselves. You lost your way. Now you're going to regain them. How well will you use them now? And all through the Cold War and all of the atomic fears, remember all that? Everybody was afraid of everybody. And then we went into terrorism and all of that. We are struggling with all of this, and we've got to get through it. The Marian apparitions, which are the apparitions or appearances of the Mother Mary, she prophesies that the age that's coming, you must have a pure heart. Therefore, usually when she appears at a time when real evil and darkness and jealousy is going to swell up among a group of people. And she says all of this has to come to the surface because you can't go into the next era with any more hatred or junk or regret on your heart. You must release it now, because the next era is the era of the pure heart. And so we need to be aware that we're going to, and those who can go into the new age, some will not be able to, you must clear all the junk out of your system, get it out of your system, prepare yourself, and make a pure, loving heart that you can enter into the golden age that's coming, that will be as 1,000 years when Satan is bound and there be no evil and no temptation on the earth. And the other spooky thing, Edgar says, then the people of the earth will meet the people of the universe. The veil will drop. The fourth dimension will open. And all the other souls who didn't come here will be there going, hi. Hi. Are you scared? No, we're ready. Okay. Remember, Gabriel gave this to Daniel, this prophecy. Now here a guy comes to Edgar Cayce and says, what can I do to help bring about the new age? And Edgar answered him and says, you will have to practice it in your own life. Darn. I just wanted a ticket. I just wanted a pass to get into it. You mean I got to do something? Yes. In 1998, Cayce says, we may find a great deal of the activities that have been wrought by the gradual changes that are coming about. These are the periods when the cycle of the solar activity or the years is related to the sun's passage through the various spheres of activity. That's the Mayan sun passage, 2012. You recall how the Mayans said that the sun was going to be aligned with the center of the Milky Way? You forgot 2012 already? Okay. All right. Became paramount to the change from the Piscean to the Aquarian age. This is gradual, not cataclysmic in the activity and the experience of the earth in this period. Now here's Gabriel's phrase. You have to remember, Daniel said to Gabriel, how long will it be until we're freed of all of this and all the promises come true? And Gabriel turned to him and said, a time, times, and a half time. And Daniel didn't ask another question. I think I would have raised my hand. Could you define that a little? Here's Edgar Cayce picking up on Gabriel's timing. These changes in the earth will come to pass, for the time, times, and half times are at an end. Here's Cayce saying this in the 40s. And there begin those periods of readjustments. For how hath he given? The righteous shall inherit the earth. Hast thou, my brother, a heritage in the earth? Woo. The entity has caught that vision of the new age, the new understanding, the new seeking for the relationships of a creative force to the sons and daughters of men. It is coming. All this dark prophecy you hear is pretty much behind us. What you're facing is the dilation of truth. There is one last thing in the Western world, the gathering of the children of Abraham. And you might not know it, but all the Arabs are Ishmaelites. They are the children of Abraham and Hagar. And they are part of the family. All the Jews are the children of Isaac, of Sarah. Abraham had a child by both of them. I got a couple of minutes and I got to tell you this fun story. Sarah's 90 years old. She hadn't gotten pregnant, but God promised she would deliver the promised child. Well, you know, ladies, what it's like. You're 90 years old, you're way past all of the normal things going on, so she turns to her husband and says, I don't know about this promised child, Abraham. Why don't you go in with my handmaiden Hagar and have the child with her? Well, just like a typical man, he doesn't even pause. Okay. And gives birth to Ishmael, the father of all the Arabs and Islam. Do you see? What do you think happens to Sarah shortly after Ishmael's born? She gets pregnant. And she gives birth to Isaac. And Isaac in Hebrew means to laugh. And she's saying, God made me to laugh. I had a baby at 90. You know? And that's the Israelites. They're all children of Abraham. The Christians come out, of course, the Israelites. So all of these are the children of Abraham, and they are of one family, though right now we're battling it out like a family often does. And I can tell you, I have been with the Arab Muslims a lot this incarnation. Many of them themselves are searching for what is this all about. You have to understand that Islam was at its peak of wisdom, enlightenment, art, beauty, culture, science in the 1300s. Women were equal. Women were poets. Women were leaders. And they've had a terrible conservative sort of decline, and they're dealing with it right now, trying to figure it out. Judaism and Christianity have gone through reformations. Islam hasn't yet, so perhaps there's a reformation coming. But it's going to be difficult. But they are all part of this one family and have to be with us in this transition, as many as can be. Otherwise, they won't be able to come in. Edgar says the wombs of the earth will be at such a higher vibe during this golden age that you won't be able to incarnate unless you have that vibe. You can only get in here through a woman. I know you think you got here some other way, but you didn't. And the wombs are going to raise their vibration so high that that's what's going to keep all darkness out of the earth for 1,000 years. Okay, if you want to read some more, I have of Egypt that has all the metaphysical stuff I showed you in a DVD here, and I also have the book 2038 with all the color photos that I showed you of the papyruses and things inside that, so you can check that out. And I thank you very much. It's been great being here.